Welcome to the second episode of COUNTERFLOW, The Way of the Chosen, basing it on the made-for-TV movie, made-for-TV movie, The Chosen by Dallas Jenkins. By way of a quiz to just ask you, how many of you have these people as your favorite characters so far? So far, considering episode 1, first shout out his name and then raise your hand if they are your favorite characters, okay? First, who is he? Nicodemus. Nicodemus, the rabbi of rabbis. Diba? Next character. Simon. Next. Woo! How many likes Andrew? Except for the fact na guwapo siya, ha? Okay. Next character. Oh, really? Who is he? Matthew, our tax collector. Lovable? Really? Seriously now? I think a lot of you will love the episode on Matthew then. Next. Lilith. Right? Lilith is one of the characters that is evolving before us, and some of you may not have known certain features that is being shown in the movie. Today, I will bring you to a conversation about her and what the changes in her life happened, because you know that towards the end of the episode, something marvelous happened to her, changing her name from Lilith to Mary. And today, in our conversation, we are going to have her as the centerpiece of the conversation this morning. When Mary met Rabboni. At the end of the episode, you've seen that Jesus called her by her name. A name that she hasn't used for a long time. And at the end, somewhere along the episodes, you will also hear her call Jesus as Rabboni. But today's conversation will be based on various Bible verses from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, where Mary Magdalene is mentioned. And I will try to introduce to you who the Mary Magdalene in the Bible is. Hopefully, some of the misconceptions will be corrected, but most especially, we will be able to understand the counterflow moment that Mary had when she met Jesus. Rabboni is a teacher, your master, your teacher, someone that you listen to and you obey. And at the end of this conversation, I would like us to marvel and understand this very beautiful truth that says, God makes the undeserving you deservingly new. That when you meet Jesus, when you establish a relationship with Him, He will make you deservingly new. And what is that? When you are given something that you do not deserve, when you are given unmerited favor, that is who God is. That is His person when He gives us His grace. So at the end of this conversation, we will understand that it will take God's grace for us to be able to change our ways. When we have a certain direction that we're going to, that we think is also good and well, then meeting Jesus and making Him a Rabboni, then will change our ways and make us deservingly new. When we meet Jesus, you don't have to be new. You don't have to be renewed. He will embrace you and take you for what you are, that undeserving person that you are, and change us into someone who is deservingly new. If you are as excited as I am, let's turn to Mary. Who is Mary? The first thing that we will know from her is that she is aptly called the Magdalene. So Mary Magdalene. But Magdalene is not her last name. Magdalene is the place where she comes from, Magdala. Magdala is somewhere along the coast of the Sea of Galilee, very near Capernaum, where Jesus' major ministries, events happened. In Capernaum, all of these cities are along the Sea of Galilee. And we know that Jesus loved that area. So one way or the other, I wouldn't be surprised that Magdala would have been one of the places that Jesus visited. Because on his way to the different places, he would walk and gather people, or people would just be gathering around him, listening to what he had to say. And I am sure that Magdala was one of those places that he went to. Pretty much like Jesus being called the Nazarene, Mary was called the Magdalene because of the place that she came from. Not because of anything, but since then, the word Magdalene has already evolved into something else. In the Philippines, ano sinatawag natin? Pag ikaw ay Magdalena, babaeng mababa ang lipad. Pakitranslate po sa ating youth. Okay? They won't be able to translate it. So it refers to women who are not very good, who do not have very good reputation. Okay? So everybody's chatting here, trying to explain what that is. So it just means that a woman who of ill repute. Okay? Someone who's not very good, who doesn't have a very good reputation. But that name has just evolved in that manner. It's not a description of who she is, much like a description of where she hails from. So that's the first thing that we know about Mary, that she comes from Magdala, thus giving the name Mary Magdalene. Turning to Luke chapter 8, verse 1, which is the first introduction of Mary Magdalene. After this, at this time, Jesus has already gone public with his ministry. He has been teaching, people have been following him, miracles of healing has been happening. And after this episode, Jesus traveled about town from one village to another, sharing the good news of the kingdom of God. And at this time, his 12 apostles were already chosen. So all 12 were with him during this scene. So people were starting to follow him. Multitudes were now gathering, not only to listen to him speak, but also to bear witness to some of the marvelous miracles that Jesus has been doing. But it was not only the men who were following him, or the 12 who were following him. As a matter of fact, there were also women who were following him, making Jesus' ministry very inclusive. Because during that time, women were not allowed to follow the rabbi. They were not allowed to study and learn. They were marginalized in the society, so much so that they were not counted in the census. They were not allowed to bear witness in court because they were part of the low rung in society. So here, Mary, called Magdalene, was introduced. They say that women who had been cured of evil spirits and diseases were also following Jesus. And these women, the first that was mentioned was Mary Magdalene. And what was the description that was given to her? From whom 7 demons had come out. How many of us have seen movies like The Exorcist or where exorcism happens? And how do the characters look like? heads turning, di ba, violently, levitating, they were messed up, their hairs, they were scary, their eyes popping out, and they were only possessed by one demon. Can you imagine being possessed by 7? 7 demons had come out of her. That when Jesus met Mary Magdalene, the key thing that has happened in her life is that after being possessed by 7 demons, all of a sudden, she's freed. Imagine with me the way she looked. Disheveled hair, filthy. She did not have the strength or even the courage or the right mental capacity to take a bath. That's why people would not approach her. People would not come to her. Most especially, people abhorred her, I can imagine. Right? Tayo lang nga pag nagagalit, di ba? When we're angry. When we're so angry, oh, ayan. Pigilin ng demonyo sa paglabas. Di ba? So, prevent the demon from coming out every time we're angry. Okay? So, aside from Mary Magdalene, although she was mentioned first, there were other key women who were following Jesus. Joanna, the wife of Chuza, the manager of Herod's household. This would give us a clue as to the friends of Mary Magdalene and how much these people were influencing her as well. Joanna, the wife of Chuza, the manager of Herod's household. So that means they were quite an it group. And Susanna and many others. This was showing that Jesus was being followed not only exclusively by the men, but also the women, even if they were not allowed to do so. So, we know that Mary of Magdala was called the Magdalene because that is where she hailed from. And in the movie, we encounter that name, Lilith. All because she was before demon-possessed. And the word Lilith means demons. Okay? So what happened after that? Aside from her being demon-possessed, look at verse 3 where it said, these women were helping to support them out by their own means. So Mary and her it group were a bit wealthy. So much so that they can support and help in the ministry of Jesus. They had the means to give off financially. And do you know, mga kapatid, na ang pinakamahirap, the most difficult part of us to be born again is our wallet. It is so difficult for us to give up the control of our finances, forgetting that God is from whom all blessings flow. Right? We question, do I really have to give 10%? Do I really have to give my tithes? Do I have to support our missions? But, Tita Bari, matindi ang pangangailangan. Kailan ba naging hindi matindi ang pangangailangan? When did we ever not have a lot of bills to pay? When did we ever not have so many commitments that we need to fulfill? But Mary, after being freed from her demons and all of these friends that she had, gave up willingly of their means to be able to support the ministry of Jesus. You know why? Because God makes the undeserving you deservingly new. Mary and her friends who were inflicted with evil spirits and diseases have now changed from someone who was not credible, someone who's not believable, someone who nobody would want to follow, has now changed to someone who was a great follower of Jesus Christ. Someone who was obedient and supportive of the ministry that Jesus had. Look at what this writer said. Every follower of Jesus has a not so great before, including a demon-possessed woman, referring to Mary Magdalene, so insignificant that her before isn't even recorded, that we're left to speculate what it might have been. The only thing we know about Mary Magdalene is that she was possessed with 7 demons. And Jesus has freed her of that. And to extend that and to make very, very off descriptions of who she was is already getting off tangent. Some described her as a promiscuous woman, like in Jesus Christ Superstar. Some even said that she was Jesus' girlfriend in The Last Temptation of Jesus. Worse, in Da Vinci Code, he was Jesus' wife. But there is nothing in the Bible that says that. So let's not extend or give meaning to where it is explicitly said. Mary Magdalene's before the description of Luke is not worth mentioning because it didn't matter. Jesus meeting this woman who was demon-possessed was freed from it. And what happened next after Mary met ROBONNI is what mattered most. Mary Magdalene was a very significant force to be described in the Bible. Do you know that Mary Magdalene is named at least 12 to 14 times in the Gospels? 3 times in Matthew, 3 times in Mark, 2 times in Luke, and 5 times in John, making her even more mentioned than some of Jesus' disciples, like Bartholomew, James, the son of Alphaeus, Simon the Zealot. Mary Magdalene is mentioned even more than them, even Thomas, who only had one key event with Jesus Christ. But that doesn't diminish what they did or what they have been doing following Jesus or the ministry that they had. What I'm trying to tell you is this, that Mary Magdalene, the woman who is supposed to be an insignificant part of society at that time, not even Jesus' ministry, was mentioned 12 to 14 times because she mattered. A woman who was possessed with 7 demons was deemed significant by Jesus Christ himself. So Mary of Magdala was from Magdala. She was demon-possessed, but she became a devoted follower and financial supporter of Jesus Christ. Because after being freed from all of her demons, she started becoming a faithful supporter and follower of Jesus. One who served witness to the key miracles that Jesus did, key listener to all the teachings that Jesus gave, but most especially, she was key witness to 2 of the most important events to ever happen in the world. Do you know that while not all the Gospels agree who were present in both the crucifixion and the resurrection, all Gospels agree that Mary Magdalene was present in both. All of them. All of them made mention that Mary Magdalene was both in the crucifixion and in the resurrection of Jesus. Because look at this. In John chapter 19 rather, near the cross stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. As her rabbi was there, flung on the cross, with a crown of thorns, bleeding, she served witness that Jesus was there. Near the cross, they stood and watched. And where were the other disciples? Except for John, all of them were gone. In Mark, it said some of the women were watching from a distance. Among them, Mary Magdalene. She would be constantly mentioned in all 4 Gospels of her presence and serving as witness to Christ's crucifixion and even up until his death. Because you know what happened? Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, Inabangan po nila. They waited and watched to see where Jesus was going to be laid. They saw and served witness to where Jesus was buried. That after that time, because it was going to be Sabbath, everybody just went home to be able to do their Sabbath rituals, their Sabbath events in their home. But Mary could not help herself. Mary Magdalene could not help herself. Maybe that night and even that day, she was so disturbed and so bothered. Because if we turn to the book of John, it will say that early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, and what time is that? About between 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning, they said, that Mary already went to the tomb. Maybe in her mind during that night, I have to go see Jesus now. She couldn't during Sabbath. It was forbidden to be able to go out. So in her mind, she already has planned, I have to go, I have to check. Were the spices correctly placed? Was he wrapped correctly? Was he buried properly? Because we know that Joseph of Arimathea and even Nicodemus was the one who claimed the body. And after claiming the body, they were just rushing through it. And do you know that the Jewish burial is such a ritual that they have to put almost about 100 pounds of spices to be able to preserve the body, to be able to anoint and worship that person. They needed to be able to put the correct amount of spices on the body to be able to keep him. And add to that, it was wrapped in linen cloths. It was not one whole blanket, it was strips of cloth that were wrapped. So iniisa-isa po nila yun na i-wrap. That's why Mary must have been very concerned. Did they wrap it properly? You know how they wrapped it? Strips of linen were going to be wrapped on the body, around the body, with the shoulders exposed. I'm sorry, I couldn't find a proper picture that was worthy to be able to show you. Aside from that, a whole piece of linen cloth was going to be wrapped on their head to protect it. So, and in between those, spices were going to be placed, maybe to prevent it from rotting right away. There was no embalming during their time in the Jewish burial ritual. But this was painstakingly done, lovingly done, that Mary was so concerned that maybe they did not do this to my rabbi. That early up the first day of the week, so this was Sunday morning, early morning, at the crack of dawn, when it was still dark, not counting how dangerous it must have been. Mary went to the tomb. And the tomb, after the body is laid inside, the tomb is covered by a very big rock. It was covered by a rock, and I cannot imagine how Mary's thought process was happening. How in the world was she going to go there and move the rock to be able to anoint Jesus, to be able to put the spices and check him out? But as we've read, when Mary reached the tomb, the stone had been removed from the entrance. And to her surprise, somebody moved it already and there was nobody around. So go to that scene. Coming in the nick of dawn, it was all very dark, not seeing anyone around, and the stone was moved. And there was only one thing that meant. That the body was not there anymore. But take note, Mary did not look in the tomb, but what did she do? She came out running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, John, because John was the one writing. I don't know if it's in humility that he wasn't mentioning his name, but he said Simon Peter and the other disciple, which was John, ran towards where Mary was directing them. Why? Because Mary said, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb and we don't know where they have put him. So what did Peter and John do? So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Were they walking? No, they were running. They were running and walking so fast. Both were running, but the other disciple, John, outran Peter. I don't know why John needed to put that. It's saying that, Peter was excited, but I'm more excited. In the marathon to the tomb, I was first. I won the marathon. So he's saying, as if saying that I was more eager than Peter at this time. So both disciple and the other disciple outran Peter, and when he reached the tomb first. But what did he do? He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Takot na lang siguro niya, no? Okay, can you imagine with me? Cloth nga. Wala ngang body. Diba? Then, Simon Peter came behind him, and what did Simon Peter do? The aggressive, very brash, very rough Simon Peter, what did he do? John just took a peek inside the tomb, but Simon Peter, who was running behind him, went straight into the tomb. Who's now more eager? So Simon Peter went into the tomb. And then what did he see? He also saw the same. Strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that has been wrapped around Jesus' head. And the cloth was lying in its place, separate from the linen. A few days later, after wrapping that and all of the spices, that linen would have gone stiff. And it would take scissors or knives to be able to cut it off. But here, as per the pictures that you see, the headpiece that was placed on the head of Jesus was placed neatly and nicely. And the strips of cloth were just laying smoothly where Jesus laid. It just showed that there was no human intervention that happened. The strips of linen was not cut, that the headpiece was not removed. It was there exactly where Jesus laid. And finally, the other disciple, John, humble pa rin niya, no? Who had reached the tomb first, he repeated it again, also went inside. So when Peter was already inside, John came inside, sabi niya siguro, okay, nothing's happening. It's safe. Let's go in. But look at this. Look at what he said. He saw and believed. Peter went inside. He saw, but he wondered. What happened? Jesus is no longer there. Remember that during this time, there was still nothing in Scripture that was saying that Jesus will be rising from the dead, right? But John, even without witnessing Jesus himself, when he saw, the word here in the Greek is theoreo, which means he theorized. He analyzed what was happening there. And then he remembered, yes, my Jesus is no longer here. He has risen. He is no longer dead. But what did they do? Jesus was no longer there. Just the strips of cloth. There was nobody around. So what did they do? Then, the disciples went back home where they were staying. Parang, Are you going to try to discover what happened? Are you going to go and look around and ask, where is the body of Jesus? What happened to him? Where is he? Right? But no. But look at what Mary did. Mary stood outside the tomb. She stayed when all of the disciples, the gentlemen, Peter and John, left Mary by the tomb. Mary, not thinking of whether any Roman soldiers was going to come, not thinking whether she was going to be arrested or questioned. She might even be accused of taking the body. because she was there. But maybe in her mind, 7 demons was casted out from me. No Roman soldier will be enough to warrant that experience. Nothing anymore. Right? If Jesus, my rabbi, was able to cast that away from me, what freedom more can I ask for? And as Mary stood outside and as she wept, maybe she was sitting in one of the rocks, she was crying and crying. Napatingin siya doon sa tomb. And when she looked at the tomb, she saw 2 angels in white inside, seated where Jesus' body had been, one on the head and the other on the foot. Peter and John did not witness this, but Mary, in her patience, was able to witness 2 angels inside the tomb. And they asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" And then she answered, "They have taken my Lord away, and I don't know where they put him." So imagine this scene with me. She was talking to the angels, and then she continued on crying, and then bigla siya napatingin sa taas. She turned around and saw Jesus standing there. But she did not realize that it was Jesus. Why? You're looking for Jesus, and He's right there standing beside you already almost. And you don't even recognize Him? But you know why Mary did not recognize Him? Because He wasn't looking for an alive Jesus. He was looking for a dead man, a dead body. She was looking for a corpse. Kamusta po tayo? How are we? When Jesus calls, when He presents Himself or He commands us to do something, are we hearing it? Are we listening? Are we able to discern and hear His commands? Oftentimes, no. Because we want something else. Our focus is not there. Our focus is not on what He is saying. Our focus is on what we want to tell Him, on what we expect that He is going to give us. And Mary was in the same position. Changed in His ways. But still, oftentimes there are times that we question ourselves, right? We question ourselves as well. And the man asked, "Woman, why are you crying?" The same question the angels asked. "Who is it you are looking for?" And thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Mukhang Amazona po ang ating Mary Magdalene. I don't know how she will be able to carry him and get him wherever he is. But her love and devotion for her rabbi removed all logic already. I have to see his body. I have to get his body. I have to be able to anoint and worship. Not realizing in her mind, that what did Jesus say? What did Jesus say? Oftentimes that happens to us. We question, "Lord, is this for me? Lord, is this where you're directing me?" Sometimes the message is already very clear. How many times have we read it? Have we seen it? People have been already talking to us about it. But still we question. We still ask the Lord, "Where are you? Where have you gone to?" And this is the most wonderful event that happened to Mary. And Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," my rabbi, my master, my Lord. With just one word, her name. That's how personal our God is. That He calls us by name. He knows each one of us by name. He calls us by our very own name. Jesus did not manifest himself visually to Mary. And oftentimes we want that. Lord, makita ko lang kayo. Magmi-ministry na po ako. Baka pag nakita niyo siya, hindi niyo kayanin. Diba? Sometimes we want to hear His audible voice. But His voice already speaks out from His word. His message is already there, given loud and clear. And the only thing we have to do is read it. His word is given, and the only thing we have to do is read it. You want to hear God's voice? Read your word. You want new revelations in your life? Read your word. Every known revelation that will happen here on earth is already there written. Every promise given and to be fulfilled is already there written. And Mary, a marginalized person in society, someone who was demon-possessed, not only by one but 7 demons, was the one that Jesus chose to be able to show himself first and foremost, rather than even John, the disciple that he loved. Charles Spurgeon had this to say, Mary was selected to see Christ first because she loved Jesus the most. John loved Jesus much, but Mary loved him better. John went away when he saw the empty sepulchre, the tomb, but Mary stood outside and wept. She waited upon the Lord. And I hope and pray that we too will always wait upon the Lord. And what did Jesus tell him? Do not hold on to me yet, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Already expressing that there was going to be an ascension, that there was going to happen. Go instead to my brothers. The first time that Jesus calls his disciples his brothers. He would call him his friends, but this time he called him his brothers. A relationship that is very, very close. I am ascending to my Father, your Father. My God, your God. Now it is all inclusive. Jesus is now giving Mary the authority to be able to call his God, your God. My Father, your Father. I am giving you that right to be his child as well. And Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, I have seen the Lord. And she told them everything that Jesus told her, everything that she saw. Mary became the very first evangelist to say and witness, He is risen. Jesus is alive. And he shared it to whom? The people closest to Jesus. And Mary obeyed Jesus' command. Go and tell the brothers. And I hope that this is going to happen to us as well. Go and tell the brothers. My Rabboni is alive. Because God makes the undeserving you deservingly new. Mary was a woman. If God was going to choose someone who had the veracity to be able to serve witness to Jesus' being resurrected, He would not have chosen a woman. Why? Because walang makikinig sa kanila. As a matter of fact, in the book of Mark, you will read that the disciples did not believe what Mary and the other women were saying. Because to them it was rubbish. How can that happen? How can you see Jesus? We all saw him crucified and dead and buried. But it was so true and real that God knew na bali-baliktarin mo man si Mary, she will tell the truth and the truth will come out. Because after that, Jesus appeared to the 11 and Jesus appeared to more than 500 to serve witness that indeed our Jesus is alive. He has risen. That even a marginalized woman, a woman na ayaw kaibiganin because of the 7 demons that he had, someone who was useless in society, was able to serve witness. Because God has changed her and made her new. Jesus did not wait for Mary to be renewed. Jesus did not wait for Mary to have taken a bath, put makeup, and presented herself new. No. And that's the same for us, mga kapatid. Jesus doesn't wait for you to be perfect, to be acceptable to Him. He calls, and the thing that you have to do is be with Him. Accept the call that God has given you. He chooses us even when we are undeserving. And that's grace. And do you know that we can only change by God's grace? We need God to change. We need God to be able to be deservingly new. So what do? Exclaim, Rabboni, my Lord, my Master. Jesus has now given us the authority to have God as our God, His Father as our Father, and share that journey with others. You know what's marvelous about God is that even before we accept it, He already knows all our stories. There's nothing to hide. But the wonderfulness of God is that He forgives. And He erases whatever background you have. And I like what one author said when he said that Jesus cleans every fish that He catches. We will be made new. And our response should be to exclaim that Jesus is my Rabbi, my teacher, my Lord, my God. I hope that you have been able to understand who Mary Magdalene is and the importance of this woman possessed by 7 demons in the ministry of Jesus. And I pray that all of us, just like her, will be able to accept that God makes undeserving you deservingly new. May we be deserving of taking on this journey of life with our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.